The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. These are the words of the late Steve Jobs, and I speak to you, and you, and you, the change agents in this room, the change agents in the Cayman Islands. As I say, good morning, and welcome to the 12th staging of the Premier Business Conference in the Cayman Islands, the Cayman Economic Outlook Conference, CEO 2050. Her Excellency, the Governor, Mrs. Helen Kilpatrick, the Honorable Alden McLaughlin, Premier and Minister of Home Affairs, Health and Culture, the Honorable Kurt D. Tibbetts, Minister, the Honorable Marco Archer, the Honorable Tara Rivers, the Honorable Samuel Bulgen, all other dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, all of you, on behalf of the Board of the Fidelity Group of Companies and our sponsors and partners, I welcome you to the Cayman Economic Outlook Conference 2015. And I want to begin by saying thank you for carving time out of your very busy schedules. Thank you for choosing to be here. We have all made an excellent choice to be here in this room. Therefore, together, let us ask the question, think growth, global opportunities, can we compete? I have the pleasure this morning of introducing Her Excellency, the Governor. She's a chartered accountant and has served as board champion for diversity, gender, devolution, sustainability, and better regulation. It was with this focus that she began her term as Governor of the Cayman Islands in 2013. On her appointment, Mrs. Kilpatrick had this to say, "I look forward to working in a constructive partnership with the elected government to ensure a safe, successful, and sustainable future for the Cayman Islands." She exhibits a tremendous willingness to bring her education, her experience, her skills, herself to bear in impacting the Cayman Islands in a positive and lasting manner. Therefore, join me in applauding Her Excellency, the Governor, Mrs. Helen Kilpatrick. Let us applaud her.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I managed to find my way to the stage. The first hurdle over. Well, it's my job to welcome you to this 12th Annual Economic Outlook Conference. And as the introduction said, last year was my first time here. And since then, I've had 12 more months to get to know the Cayman Islands, its financial services sector, and I'm pleased to say quite a number of you who are here today. There are plenty of good reasons why so many of us in the business community look forward to this event every year. I don't think it's just the caliber of the speakers and the wealth of knowledge that the audience brings to the event that are remarkable. I think it's the programme where we should praise the organisers for putting something together that really is uniquely relevant to our situation here in the Cayman Islands. If I could just take a brief look at some of the things that we already know about 2015. From an economic perspective, we're just about to hear from the Premier that things are looking up. He's recently said that GDP was expected to grow by 2.1% in the current year. And that's the strongest growth that the islands will have experienced since the economic crisis, which is obviously brilliant. But the government needs to work to provide a strong foundation for this growth. And I'm pleased to see that the continued commitment to promoting fiscal restraint, substantial plans for infrastructure development, and many assorted legislative and economic measures that the Premier will outline will underpin that growth. But of course, it's not just government that drives an economy. We all support the concept of knowledge sharing and working together between the public and private sectors. We've got to do this for this island to stay ahead of our competing other offshore centres, and that will help our citizens enjoy the best possible quality of life. Events such as this are absolutely critical in this knowledge sharing process. And like you, I'm looking forward to hearing the Premier speak about the relationship between government, business and the community. To support this, I'm pleased to tell you that my office is sponsoring a public-private partnership workshop next week. It's going to be delivered by some experts from Infrastructure UK, which is a body that works closely with Her Majesty's Treasury on infrastructure projects. The remainder of the conference is addressing subjects that are topical for the financial services sector, but also for the country more generally. I was particularly interested to see the topic for the local panel this afternoon, which is focusing on the sustainability of the Cayman Islands economic model. Obviously, this is very relevant given the positive economic trends I've just outlined. But I think we're all very aware that despite the high GDP of the Cayman Islands, the gap between the richest and the poorest is very significant and brings its own problems. Crime in the Cayman Islands continues to be a concern to us all. But I think it's very encouraging that there's now a growing acceptance that the fundamental issues at the heart of society can really only be tackled by an effective partnership involving the police, government agencies, the private sector, and the public. So, I'd like to end by wishing all of you who are visiting us to the Cayman Islands today a very, very warm Cayman welcome. I'm confident that you're going to have a productive and enjoyable day. I look forward to hearing the results of your discussions, but crucially, I think, working with you to make the Cayman Islands an even better place than they already are. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. This announcement will be of major import to some of you, so here goes. We have Wi-Fi, and it's free. The network is Ritz-Carlton Conference, and that's CONF. The password, just to make sure you're paying attention, is CEO 2015. So that's CEO 2015 is the password. Blaine Lee opined, "The great leaders are the best conductors. They reach beyond the notes to reach the magic in the players." Anwar Sundarji is above all a great leader who reaches for and touches the magic in those who work and interact with him. And interestingly, the Cayman Economic Outlook, or CBO, as it was a few years ago, is his baby, and came to life out of this tremendous desire for change, learning, growth, and transformation. He insists that we all must be prepared and equipped for the new normal. He has transitioned from a degree in mechanical sciences to an MBA from Harvard Business School. He has an extensive background and knowledge in emerging markets and has held various senior executive positions in international trade and finance in New York and Los Angeles, and later the Bahamas. Anwar is chairman and chief executive officer of the Fidelity Group of Companies. He's therefore perfectly suited to chart our course at this Cayman Economic Outlook. He told me not to say this, so here goes. Join me in welcoming the dapper, dashing, and I'll have to say it again. Join me in welcoming the dapper, dashing, and debonair Anwar Siddiqui.
So Jackie's introduction is always cringe-inducing, I can tell you that, right? So she's a bossy lady. What can you do, right? You just have to go with the flow. Anyway, so welcome to our 12th annual Cayman Economic Outlook. And a very special welcome to the Governor and the Premier. And also welcome and a big thank you to members of the Cabinet and other senior policymakers who are here today.
It's just 2 projectors. Okay, cool.
A very special welcome to our distinguished speakers, some of whom are visiting here for the first time. And we had them in the Bahamas a couple of days ago, and again too, right? It's paradise, so they were very excited, and I think they were glad to be away from the cold in the Northeast. That's one of the reasons. So we hope that they will find much to admire and enjoy and will come back for a longer stay. That's our hope. As always, the purpose of this conference is to educate, inform, and provoke you, and generally to encourage a dialogue on a variety of global topics pertinent to small island nations in general, and the Cayman Islands in particular. Now, since at least 2009, I've been labeled with the moniker Mr. Doom and Gloom, and with these messages, and with good reason. There hasn't been much to be upbeat about since the onset of the Great Recession, but this year I'm trying very hard to put on a new face, one with at least half a smile, but don't count on it. I'm warning you. So my address today is going to cover 3 primary topics: the drop in fuel prices and its impact on us, the rising global inequality in wealth and income, which is a big issue actually, and we need to be thinking about it a lot more than we are, and finally, the impact of technology on jobs. So after 5 difficult years, parts of the world seem to be coming out of a recession. The US is likely to have GDP growth of over 2% and maybe even 3%. And unemployment in the United States is finally on the way down. Europe is still struggling, but even there are some bright spots in Germany and the UK. But we're not going to talk about Greece. That's another issue altogether. That's another topic. Much of this good news is fueled literally by lower energy prices. And prices have dropped not simply because of demand and supply imbalances, which there are many, but also because of an element of geopolitical intrigue. My own view is that the United States and the Middle Eastern allies are ganging up on Russia to make Russia pay the price for having invaded Crimea and trying to annex eastern Ukraine. But that's another story, right? So the production of shale oil and oil from fracking in North America, along with concerted economic warfare, has driven oil prices down by half. In the United States, gasoline was selling for as low as $1.68 a gallon, not so long ago. While we won't experience quite those savings at the pump here, and I wonder why, Premier. You know, if the price drops by 50% globally, I understand that we've got some taxes and so on and so forth, but you would expect a similar drop in at least the net price, right? Which we haven't seen. So lower fuel prices will result in an estimated savings of $700 per motorist in the United States and $1,356 per US household. That's a big sum of money. And most of it is going to be spent. And we can only hope that some of it will be spent here. But for the global economy overall, energy prices are a zero-sum game. When consumers win, producers lose, and vice versa. The countries that depend on high oil prices to fund a substantial part of the economy, such as Venezuela, Nigeria, Russia, Canada, and much of the Middle East, are not doing so well. But Saudi Arabia, which has enough cash reserves to ride out the storm of sustained lower prices, may be fine. But Venezuela is truly hurting, and Canada is not doing so well. Projections are that oil prices may stay low for at least a year, which is good news for Cayman and other oil-consuming nations. So now that I've talked about the good news, I'm compelled, not just from habit, but from necessity turn to foreshadowing trends. And here the news is not so good. Our job here at Cayman Economic Outlook, or CEO, is to make you aware of issues and possible solutions so they can help retool your businesses to be on the winning side of the global economic formula. For several years, we have pointed out that only a well-skilled, well-educated, and skilled workforce will be able to compete on the world scene. And that with technology, the world is truly in our living rooms and our back rooms, no work permit required. It's kind of obvious, isn't it? But, we still insist on beating people up. Anyway, outsourcing for tasks which can easily be delivered by the lowest bidder of the internet will continue. But we notice an interesting trend that has developed throughout the world, and we've noticed it here in Cayman too. Now, as described by Thomas Piketty, a prize-winning French economist who has written the bestseller Capital in the 21st Century, global wealth has been dramatically unequally divided between the haves and the have-nots. There has, of course, always been a gap between the world's richest people and the world's poorest. Most of us regularly cast an eye over charts ranking per capita income, but those averages don't really tell the real story. Right now, worldwide, the richest 1% of the population own more than the poorest 48%. To put it even in more vivid terms, according to Oxfam, 80 individuals own the same as 3.5 billion with a B, people. And the rate of inequality is increasing. Now, if you combine the effect of rising income inequality with inevitable increases in technology, you end up with a truly sobering picture. So 2 decades ago, as you know, mobile phones were rare and internet a novelty. Today, 3 billion people are connected to the web. And Ericsson predicts that by 2020, 90% of the population will have a mobile phone. It's a huge number. Think about it. And you remember the old brick cell phones, right? Now we've got all these fancy iPhones, and amazing. So the connectivity is unleashing extraordinary new opportunities with vast numbers of people now accessing financial services for the first time. And they can also tap into other areas such as politics, health, and education with extraordinary implications. The world has changed. Now, most Davos delegates, and these are the guys who flew in on the corporate jets, there were apparently 1,600 jets in Davos this year. And these are the same people who are swilling champagne and eating caviar, but talking about the poor. At the World Economic Forum in January, they said they expected more innovation in years to come, but when it came to employment, most predicted a decline. That's because people will do more with less, and technology will amplify their productivity. One widely cited statistic in Davos was that automation will replace some 45% of the jobs in the United States in the next 20 years. 45%, that's a huge number, right? And the consensus was that most would be middle-tier jobs that would disappear. So the future of employment, at least according to Davos, is a world divided between low-skilled, low-paid service jobs, such as maids, dog walkers, fishing, and farming, and highly skilled elite jobs. Everything else is potentially vulnerable. Now, what impact will technology have on Cayman Islands? It's a question that we need to ponder on, I think. But the cyber revolution challenge is simply that the pace of change is extraordinary, and we have yet to find good answers to the issues that we will face ahead. A solution may be education, but we've spent vast sums of money and failed dismally to have a better educated population, despite the amounts of money that we've spent. Which path our children end up on is somewhat left to us as leaders. Education is the key to being a have or a have-not, and we owe the children the best possible chance to be in the 1% if they choose. If the Davos predictions become a reality, then income inequality will get worse in the coming years, and this is truly a sobering thought. Why should income inequality matter to us? Wealth management is one of our core industries in Cayman, and it employs a good number of young, educated middle class. It matters because a consequence of this wealth divergence is that the middle class is getting squeezed globally. It matters because the international banking industry, catering for this privileged class, is slowly cutting back and laying off our middle-class people. Reports came out recently that the US middle class as a whole is now economically behind many developed countries. And the same trend is visible both in the Bahamas and Cayman Islands. We know in the bank, we see where the credit applications come from. They come from people who have it. In the meantime, the people who don't have it are struggling to pay their bills and pay their mortgages and so on, right? And that chasm, I think, is widening, not narrowing. At a simplistic level, if much of the middle class in the US is no longer able to afford destination vacations, our island economies will surely suffer. But of longer concern is the fact that grossly inequitable living situations are inherently politically unstable. When people feel they have less to lose, they're willing to risk it all. And the Arab Spring has recently proved that point and has shown that once the lid is lifted on civic upheaval, nothing goes back in the box. We're here to not only become aware of these global issues, but to understand how to approach them locally. We're fortunate to have with us today David McWilliams, who's Irish, who will attempt the impossible to make economics both understandable and enjoyable. That's an oxymoron for an economist, right? But he's really very funny, and I think you'll enjoy him speak. Then Ms. Pamela Meyer will turn us all into the terror of cocktail party circuit by giving us hints on lie spotting. I was terrified when she gave that speech in the Bahamas. I persuaded my wife not to come. I said, listen, honey, why do you want to come? You'll hear this lady speak in the Cayman Islands. Well, she is here today, and I was hoping that Pamela was speaking in the afternoon. But no, she's speaking this morning sometime. So I'm afraid. But anyway, let me just say this to you. Men and women are equally opportunity abusers of lying, right? So women lie as much as men lie. So, hey, fellas, you're okay. And then Aaron Dingman is bringing us expertise on corporate strategy. And finally, Mike Walsh will touch on one of my favorite topics, disruptive technologies. These speakers, and I note, and you will note too, they are refreshingly youthful compared to some old fogies and baby boomers like me. And are here to help us look beyond our borders while giving us ideas to implement within our walls. So I hope you will stay, particularly the government visitors, that they will stay beyond the Premier's speech. The speakers will be followed by a panel discussion on matters near and dear to us, including income inequality, which is on the agenda, I think, and there'll be some questions. The panelists will respond to questions. So we hope you will enjoy the event and join us at the end of the conference for our regular cocktail party. Finally, I want to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors, many of whom have been supporting this conference since inception, which is 12 years, right? I think we've spent over $1 million sponsoring this event. We also welcome IRG, our newest sponsor, and we thank all of you for attending today. Without you, this conference would not be possible. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank our staff. There are lots of moving parts in creating this conference, lots and lots of moving parts. And so the staff in our company have been working tirelessly the last few months making this happen. So behind the scenes, there's lots of panic, although it seems as if it's all perfectly set up, but it's not quite like that. So I want to thank them particularly for the effort. And then we have a whole army of people outside, as you saw, right? Registering and giving you badges and welcoming you. So thank you again for coming. Thanks very much.
You have to agree, not only was he debonair, but determined in preparing us for the future. Agree? And for those who don't know, he's my ultimate boss. It is said that nothing in life is free, so we must give credit where credit is due. So, on your behalf, I thank Lime for making free Wi-Fi available to us. So thank you, Lime. I have waited an entire year for this opportunity. I now get to introduce the Premier. The Honorable Alden McLaughlin, Premier of the Cayman Islands and Minister of Home and Community Affairs, serves as leader of the People's Progressive Movement, of which he's a founding member. He's currently serving his 4th term in the Legislative Assembly and has represented the District of Georgetown in the Legislative Assembly continuously since 2000. As Minister of Education, he led the transformation of education in Cayman, laying down the foundation for world-class 21st century learning. He remains passionate about the need to improve education in the Cayman Islands and to produce young people who are creative and innovative, problem solvers and critical thinkers, and who possess the skills and abilities which are locally relevant and globally competitive. For his contribution to constitutional development in the Cayman Islands, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II awarded him the MBE in the Queen's Birthday Honors in 2010. Now, to understand what is truly important to someone, pay attention to the photo they show you on their smartphone. Recently, I was honored and humbled that the Premier shared with me photos of his healthy, vibrant tomato plants. And I want to say to you, in my final words of introduction, he's a man who is more interested in the growth of the Cayman Islands than he is in the growth of his plants. Let us therefore applaud the Premier of the Cayman Islands to present the State of the Nation, the Honorable Alden McLaughlin. And when he emerges from the curtains, you shall applaud again. Thank you, Premier.
Thank you, Jackie. And Anwar, I relate to your expression about cringe-worthy introductions. I will skip the usual protocol. I think it's been established, and I think everybody knows who the important people here are. I just want to say before I start, though, that it really is a privilege to work with a governor who is firmly in Cayman's corner. And much of what I say here this morning about the state of the nation is because we do have Helen Kilpatrick at the helm, who helps us navigate the labyrinth of the FFR, opens doors for us at the FCO, and lobbies hard on Cayman's behalf. And so I hope I don't cause her to lose her job as a result of that. But I think it is worth noting. And the government, myself and the government, are very, very pleased that we have her to work with over the course of this term. To the business at hand. When I received the invitation to speak today, I was intrigued with the topic. Think growth, global opportunities, can we compete? I thank the chairman and the board of Fidelity for once again asking me to offer my perspective. There is absolutely no hesitation in my mind that the answer to the question, can we compete, is a very loud and unequivocal yes. The Cayman Islands has been competing and punching above its weight for decades. But it hasn't always been that way. When I was born, which I like to think wasn't all that long ago, there were only about 8,000 people in the entire Cayman Islands. And there was little in terms of infrastructure and employment opportunities for our people. Many Caymanians sought a living overseas and on the seas. Fast forward to today, and a population of nearly 60,000, and Cayman is now one of the leading financial centers and tourist destinations in the world. While circumstances elsewhere may have initially been favorable to us, fortune favors the brave, and there is no doubt that successive administrations have seen the importance of building capacity and developing a competitive edge in the fast-paced world of international finance while creating and nurturing a quality tourism product. When I spoke to you last year, I recalled the hectic first 9 months in which our young government had gotten much accomplished. Much more has been achieved since then, and I believe principal among these accomplishments has been restored confidence in brand Cayman. Fiscal responsibility, good governance, and integrity are the hallmarks of this administration. Many will recall that when we took office in 2013, the relationship between the Cayman Islands and the United Kingdom was acrimonious. The Progressives-led administration has done much to improve those poor relations, and I am happy to say that comity has been restored. It is confidence in the country and in government that makes us attractive to local and global investors. We understand that to grow and compete successfully, government must demonstrate the ability to balance many things. Finances must be managed prudently, and fairness and honesty must be tantamount. Government must also show an ability to work in partnership with the private sector to grow the economy and improve the country. Our success ensures our people prosper and live good, safe, healthy, and productive lives. In this new year, we're fast approaching midterm. I must tell you that time is passing swiftly, and sometimes we start to panic. Because while we have made a good start on achieving many of our goals, we know that there is much work that remains to be done, and a great deal that still needs our attention. Many of you will be aware that there are several government projects underway and on solid footing, all following a best practices model that takes time to deliver, but one that will produce good outcomes and furthers our ability to compete. Government continues to improve the environment for doing business on our shores, as well as helping create economic and employment opportunities for Caymanians and residents. I believe we have performed quite well in this regard, and I have been heartened by the response and feedback of business owners of all sizes to our initiatives. As I said earlier, one of our top jobs has been to restore investor confidence in Cayman. Our success is proven in the number of private sector projects in the pipeline. The country is also in much better financial condition than in years past. All of the economic indicators point to growth. We have been able to achieve this because we save money where we can and strive to be efficient in the way we provide services while carefully managing our revenue streams. Our sensible financial management has moved us back to meaningful budget surpluses and has set us on a path to returning to financial independence. We have projected overall revenue with no new revenue measures, I might add, of $657.8 million for the 2014-15 budget year, and we are forecasting to grow the economy year on year, with revenues reaching $704 million in 2017-18. All this by working with businesses and doing what's needed to attract investment and to protect and grow our tourism and financial services sectors, making us a worthy competitor on the world stage. We also continue to manage carefully our expenses, keeping costs under control. That means we will end the 2014-15 financial year with an expense line of $529.7 million, increasing to a projected $535.7 million in financial year 2017-18. This is an increase of about $6 million, or 1%, spread over a 3-year period, and this includes a long overdue cost of living adjustment for civil servants. Keep in mind also that we project revenues over that same period to grow by $46.2 million, or 7%. I should also note that government will be giving up revenue over this period from a reduced import duty on diesel fuel brought in by Caribbean Utilities Company, as well as from a reduction in various fees for businesses, which I will address in a few moments. For the current fiscal year, which will end on 30th of June, the projected operating surplus for central government is $128 million. Surpluses expected for upcoming fiscal years are $124.5 million for 2015-16, $134.8 million for 2016-17, and $168.3 million for 2017-18. With careful money management, this government is now operating on a cash basis without the need for an overdraft facility, which peaked at $22.6 million in the 2013-14 fiscal year. Before the Progressives-led administration took office, it was not uncommon for annual overdraft interest costs to be $750,000. In fact, in our first year in office, we were able to reduce that figure to $66,000. This year, overdraft interest will be zero. With renegotiated interest rates on some loans, coupled with planned and managed repayment of various borrowings, public sector interest costs are expected to fall from $39.2 million currently to $28.2 million during the 2017-18 fiscal year. We are able to repay debt because we have a plan and are sticking to it. Thus, surpluses have allowed us to not only reduce the public tax burden, but also to reduce our debt and the financing cost of that debt. That means a reduction in the cost of doing business and the cost of living, both of which give us a further competitive edge. Consistent and real surpluses will also allow the country to have sufficient cash balances to meet our required cash reserves of 90 days of expenditure in fiscal year 2015-16, improving to 202.6 days of expenditure by 2017-18. Government will also have the means to further reduce borrowing by 2017-18. These surpluses, coupled with reduced borrowing, will help ensure that the country will be better able to withstand any unexpected future economic downturns. It will also provide the fiscal space for further development of our human capital. From a fiscal perspective, the country is capable of holding its own, and indeed of outperforming many larger economies. Sound finances are the foundation to sustain growth and competitiveness. I spoke earlier of increasing confidence in brand Cayman, and if our financial performance has not proven this, then surely it is reflected in our growth in imports, gross domestic product, banking and financial services, falling unemployment, tourism numbers, and construction projects. In the 2014-15 fiscal year, gross domestic product is growing at 2.1%, compared with 1.6% in fiscal 2013-14, and is forecast to grow by 2.3% in 2015-16 and 2.6% in 2016-17. That growth is due to vibrancy in the hotel and restaurant sector, real estate, wholesale and retail businesses, spurred by tourism and development, including government-related projects, and large-scale residential, commercial, and hotel construction. Under our watch, the value of non-petroleum imports for 2014 increased to $629.5 million, compared to $603.5 million in 2013, a 4.3% increase. These imports include increases in food and beverage, construction-related products, materials, and manufactured goods. I share these numbers with you because in a small island context, the growth in the value of imports is an indication of an economy that is flourishing. The insurance industry, and captives in particular, continues to perform well, with Cayman remaining the leading jurisdiction for healthcare captives. Licenses had grown by 14% as at June 2014. Unemployment is one number that we are happy to see declining. It stood in fiscal year 2012-13 at 6.3% and at 6.2% in 2013-14. With a growing economy, unemployment is expected to be at 5.9% in 2014-15 and is forecast to decrease to 4.9% by 2017-18. The employment situation is far better now than it was when we took office. All data indicate that unemployment is falling and is projected to continue to fall over the next few years as projects come on stream and as we get more people back into jobs. An increase in work permits is a clear indication that the economy is rebounding, that employers are hiring. There is a view in some quarters, however, that every time you grant a work permit, it means a Caymanian did not get that job. But this is not necessarily the case. In many cases, the grant of a work permit for a managerial or professional position, for example, means a business is growing and actually creates additional jobs for administrative, secretarial, or support staff. That said, unemployment is still not where we want it to be, and we are working hard to diversify the economy further and help create new jobs. That is why we have always backed Dr. Shetty's Health City, Cayman Islands in East End. And that is why we are working with investors, both local and international, to help get new projects off the ground that will not only provide short-term jobs during construction phases, but also on an ongoing basis. The opening of Health City early last year was a welcome shot in the arm of Cayman's economy and is expected to continue to grow with a new medical school and a residential aftercare community. Construction is expected to start on other aspects of the project by the middle of the year. The hospital is also helping Cayman attract other ventures such as medical tech businesses that have declared an interest in investing here. As such, my government has adopted an aggressive legislative agenda aimed at modernizing Cayman's intellectual property regime, which will entail new legislation being passed this year dealing with copyright and trademarks protection. This is intended to broaden the global protection of intellectual property registered in the Cayman Islands. It will have a positive impact on Cayman's economy. As international research has shown, there is a positive correlation between the strengthening of the IP system and future economic growth. We're also seeing an increase in other construction projects. As of June 2014, values of building permit fees had increased by 190.4% to $271.2 million versus the prior year, the highest level seen since 2007, when the PPM was previously at the helm of government. The main driver this time around has been the $309 million Kimpton Hotel and Condominium project. Post-June 2014, several hotel and condo projects have been approved by the Planning Department or are in the works. These include the Grand Palazzo on North Sound near Crystal Harbor, a new hotel on the old Hyatt site owned by Embassy Investments, the Beach Bay Hotel in Bordentown, and the Arnold Palmer sanctioned Ironwood development off Frank Sound Road, as well as some others. I was pleased to be part of the groundbreaking of the Grand Palazzo this past Monday. This US $200 million Caymanian development will bring needed job opportunities for people and a further boost to the construction industry. I am particularly heartened by developer Louis Ebanks' pledge to ensure that as many Caymanians as possible will be hired at every level of the project. Projects like Grand Palazzo and those underway by DART don't just happen overnight. Over the past year, we have been working with DART Realty to negotiate and finalize the third amendment to the controversial NRA agreement. The amendment that we have negotiated includes the elimination of the 50% tourism accommodation tax rebate for all DART hotels. My government listened to our tourism industry, our investors, and to our constituents. DART Realty, always an engaged corporate citizen, listened to us. The tax rebate is gone. The tourism playing field remains level. Full tax will be collected for both the Kimpton and all subsequent DART hotels, providing a continuous revenue stream to government. In place of the tax rebate, DART will receive an increase in the NRA agreement recovery cap as well as duty abatements and waivers for 30 years. This will serve both to incentivize development and provide a means to recover investment made through the agreement. Dart Realty has committed to invest a further $400 million in new infrastructure over the course of the next 10 years. This is $400 million above and beyond the $300 million currently being spent on the Kimpton Hotel project. This investment will include a new 5-star hotel at Cayman Bay and exciting plans to create a sea-to-sound experience for residents and visitors through elevated development connecting 7 Mile Beach to the town center. Development will also extend into Dart lands in other areas of Cayman, filling a pipeline with continuous economic stimulus, work for local companies, and employment opportunities for the Caymanian people. The very first thing Dart's $400 million investment will build is a new 4-lane dual carriageway realigning Esther Tibbetts Highway through Cayman Bay. It will take about 1 year from the start of construction until completion. Dart already holds the leasehold to the former Safe Haven property and subject to compliance with legal requirements with respect to the disposition of Crown land. Government has agreed to the sale of the freehold title to this property, inclusive of the North Sound Golf Club. This will result in revenue to the Treasury to help fund government's much-needed infrastructure projects. It will also deliver long-term economic benefit from direct investment in real estate, the associated stamp duty revenues from a new source, and the future cycle of land sales. Government has also agreed to enact bespoke legislation to facilitate development and freehold sale of land over the 2 roads that pass through Cayman Bay. Dart has also committed to construct, at its own expense, an emergency access road which will pass through the Kimpton Hotel property to allow public vehicle access in the event of an emergency that closes Esther Tibbetts Highway. The components of the NRA agreement and the Third Amendment are all direct investment. This is not yet measuring the full economic impact. My government is well pleased with this resolution to the NRA agreement, which cements a base for sustained growth of our economy. In total, Dart will invest an estimated US $1.3 billion in the development over the next 20 years. Dart's return on this investment is inextricably tied to the continuing success of both the tourism and financial services industries and securing growth in all of those industries' sectors. We will continue to work together with Dart to enhance the positive business climate, infrastructure, safety, prosperity, and lifestyle that differentiates Cayman from every other country in the world. Employment and the economy will also be assisted by several needed national infrastructure projects that are now underway and will help us compete regionally and globally. These include, in part, airport improvements on all 3 islands, creation of cruise berthing in Georgetown, a solid waste management project, the revitalization of our capital, and an expansion of the Linford-Pearson Highway, as well as other roadworks that are all part of the overall Georgetown revitalization plan. All of the projects are pretty much on track. The new $50 million airport terminal expansion project at Owen Roberts International Airport is furthest along, with temporary improvements having been completed. We expect substantive construction, which is being funded with $35 million from the Airports Authority's coffers, to begin this summer, following the usual tender process. In addition, Cabinet has pledged a further $15 million over the next 2 years to fast-track the project to bring relief to the traveling public. To improve the customer experience at Owen Roberts, the Airport Authority has begun the soft rollout of a meet and greet service. CIAA is working closely with Immigration, Customs, and the airlines to offer passengers the option of paying for a fast-track service through both arrival and departure processes. The initiative was initially launched in October last year and has received positive responses from the limited number of businesses who are testing the service and from the passengers themselves. CIAA is exploring further improvements, such as implementing online booking to ensure that we offer the best services possible to meet customers' expectations. It is hoped that a wider rollout of this new program, which the CIAA plans to announce shortly, will come in the very near future, and that this service, along with the other upgrades at the airports, demonstrates to our business partners and visitors that we are serious and committed to facilitating business. We are also on track for the cruise berthing facility. Following a final environmental impact assessment, public consultation, and an approved environmental management plan, design development for the cruise ship berthing is scheduled for completion in early 2016. The design-build tender process should take place by summer 2016. Another major project that this government will deliver is an integrated solid waste management facility. This is expected to have a major recycling and composting component, and we anticipate that it will also use waste-to-energy technology. But this will all be determined once AMEC UK Limited has completed its work and delivered a strategic plan to the country that will serve as a roadmap for an overall waste management solution for the next 50 years. I am hopeful that physical work on creating the solution can be started by early 2017. In the interim, we've already enhanced operations at the Georgetown landfill by reinstating good landfill management practices, as well as replacing old and used landfill equipment and vehicles. As we keep our focus on Georgetown, government will breathe new life into Georgetown's waterfront and main commercial area. Improvements will start at the end of the month with the widening of Godfrey Nixon Way. This will consist of pedestrian and lane improvements, including a turning lane on what has become a busy, bustling boulevard. Similar upgrades of Smith Road and Humber Lane will take place before the end of this financial year, which is June. In the coming financial year, improvements to Linford Pearson Highway, creating 2 lanes in either direction from Bobby Thompson roundabout to the Tropical Gardens roundabout will follow. We see these roads as the catalyst to the revitalization project, as they will facilitate the efficient flow of traffic in and out of the business district. In addition, changes to building codes are underway that will include mixed-use development in central Georgetown. It is anticipated these will go to caucus and cabinet next month and will be with the Legislative Assembly by mid-year. In the meantime, we have been meeting with businesses and developers interested in the revitalization project and have discussed potential unique developments for Georgetown. Should these projects come to fruition, they will not only lead to more jobs in the construction industry, but will enhance retail, commercial, and tourism offerings in Georgetown. A significant aspect to the revitalization project will be the creation of public green spaces. I am pleased to announce that government is in discussions with the private sector to create a park on the site of the now closed and dilapidated old glass house, which will be demolished. In addition, we plan to create a recreational park and public beach next to the South Sound launch ramp, which will help preserve that pristine area for long-term public enjoyment. And with the restarting of the work on the new John Gray High School Hall, we have not left the all-important area of education out of our infrastructure improvement plans for the capital. In addition to these projects, government has taken several initiatives to reduce the cost of doing business in Cayman, to remain competitive with other jurisdictions, and to help not only the private sector, but Caymanians and residents as well. We have reduced import duty to licensed traders from 22% to 20% at a cost of $4 million to the government coffers, and have also implemented a series of reductions to trade and business license fees as an incentive to support existing entities and aid in the creation and development of new, small, and micro businesses. In January, the import duty charge on diesel brought in by Caribbean Utilities Company was reduced from 75 cents an imperial gallon to 50 cents. That reduction should mean lower prices for electricity, which ought to equate to lower prices for goods and services in an effort to entice spending and help bolster the economy. This government is also committed to reducing the overall cost of fuel to consumers. We continue to seek opportunities for the entry of a third fuel provider to improve competitiveness. But we also want the two existing fuel companies to become more transparent to help ensure that residents are paying a fair price for fuel while allowing the oil companies an equitable profit. We have invited the oil companies to work with government, but we are also moving swiftly to create a Public Utilities Commission, which will have as part of its remit the regulation of the fuel sector. And I should say, we are also prepared to make other legislative changes, if necessary, to protect consumers. We are continuing to take a hard look at the introduction of a possible minimum wage. We expect that a draft report from the committee looking into this issue will be available to caucus and cabinet by mid-March and made public in April. I am hoping that once public consultation has been completed, we will be able to quickly move things forward and bring a draft bill to the Legislative Assembly later this year or early 2016. As we find ways to reduce the cost of doing business, the Progressives-led administration is also looking for ways to enhance our ability to attract businesses to our shores. Our first special economic zone is Cayman Enterprise City, which is enjoying considerable success. There are now 140 companies in the zone and a further 383 in the pipeline, just waiting to settle here. CEC has acquired a 50-acre site that will become the permanent home for its campus on the outskirts of Georgetown, just minutes from the airport. And government is working with them on completing an already gazetted access road, which is on Crown land. Turning to tourism, I am pleased to advise that we are seeing record numbers of arrivals. At the end of 2014, total visitor air arrivals for the year were 382,816, which translates to 37,429 more passengers than in the same period in 2013. The increase occurred even though we did not have any increase in room stock. Creative marketing to attract visitors to our shores during the slow months was responsible for the increased numbers and helped regulate the flow of visitors through the year. Likewise, cruise arrivals grew. From January to December 2014, there were 1,609,555 cruise visitors, compared to 1,375,872 for all of 2013. Given improving relations between the United States and Cuba, there are some who wonder whether our tourism product will be able to compete should Cuba fully open to the U.S. It is important to note that while trade and travel restrictions have been somewhat eased in various categories, the ban on unrestricted travel between the U.S. and Cuba for tourism purposes still remains in place. We are not unduly concerned about the reopening of Cuba to United States citizens because it's going to be a slow, bureaucratic process. But it is something that we are watching carefully while also working to enhance our tourism product and infrastructure. We will continue to work with the industry to ensure that Cayman retains its reputation of having some of the best hotels, shopping, and restaurants in the region while remaining attractive to the key U.S. market. Here at home, with improved marketing, we are set for tourism numbers to grow even larger this year. Even the Cayman Compass was forced to admit in one of its editorials recently that the future of Cayman's tourism is sky high. Over on the sister islands, 331 of those cruise arrival numbers I told you about were visitors who cruised to Cayman Brac, injecting much-needed cash into that island's economy. We have improved scheduled Cayman Airways air service to Cayman Brac using larger turboprop aircraft. The Charles Colonel International Airport has also been enhanced to allow for international flights coming into Cayman Brac, and additional space and seating is now there to accommodate larger numbers of passengers. The Progressives-led administration is committed to seeing Cayman Brac and Little Cayman thrive, and grow. While we are growing our economy on all three islands, we remain keenly aware of the need to protect our environment and diverse ecology. We consider our natural environment a gift, attracting visitors to our shores and protecting us during storms, hence the passage of the National Conservation Law. This administration also considers crime reduction a high priority. We are committed to continuing to work with law enforcement to reduce all crime while examining ways to reduce recidivism. Because we can link some crimes with unemployment, this government remains committed to helping to create job opportunities as well as providing programs that assist individuals in finding employment. We understand well that safety of a jurisdiction is one of the things that potential investors and visitors explore. And as we all know, crime has once again spiked, and the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service, and the Commissioner in particular, has assured us that his staff is working diligently to find solutions. That said, the Cayman Islands remains one of the safest jurisdictions in which to invest, work, and play, which gives us a competitive advantage. But to assist the courts and law enforcement, Cabinet has agreed to offer by public tender the sale of the Central Police Station property, which occupies prime real estate in Georgetown, on condition that the money is used for the construction of a new facility on government land on Lyndhurst Avenue, or Halfway Pond, as we used to call it. The Minister of Planning, Lands, Agriculture, Housing and Infrastructure is now working towards a request for proposal for this site. The current police station will continue to be used while the new facility is under development. The property at Halfway Pond is also large enough to accommodate a new courts facility, and a steering committee has been established by the Ministry and Judicial Services to develop a strategic business analysis for that project. In relation to immigration, we have shown our ability to compete by continuing to improve legislation and policy to further enhance Cayman's attractiveness as a destination to live, visit, and invest. Recently, we approved additional funding to ensure adequate resources are provided at our airport arrival counters. We have seen immediate results in the reduction of long lines and wait times at our immigration and customs halls, as well as bolstering our border security. Government has also amended immigration legislation recently to allow people traveling to the Cayman Islands for the purpose of meetings to enter our shores for up to 10 days without requiring a work permit, and for persons who own property in the Cayman Islands but do not have permanent residency or a work permit to be allowed to stay for up to 6 months. These actions and decisions taken by this government have been very well received. I thank those, some of whom are in this room, for their continued support and positive feedback of these actions. Of course, it would be remiss of me to omit the legislative reform my government undertook when we entered office in May 2013. You will recall at that time we were faced with the threat of over 2,000 people being required to stop working and leave the jurisdiction on a single day. Through the tireless efforts of my administration, we were able to enact legislation that allowed for the uninterrupted operation of all our industries. In addition, we reformed our permanent residency system to create a fairer, more predictable, and transparent process. That's just a glimpse of what we're doing at home to ensure that we can remain competitive through a thriving, dynamic, and diverse economy. On the world stage, we are relentless in promoting and defending the Cayman Islands brand, as well as a well-regulated, tax-neutral jurisdiction, providing a variety of investment opportunities. You saw the results of our forceful pushback to defend our credibility against the unwarranted action by the Financial Conduct Authority in the UK 6 months ago. Our efforts are continuing to bear fruit, and as a recent example, it was announced that Lee Ka-shing, regularly part of the Fortune 500 list of billionaires and Hong Kong's wealthiest businessman, is shifting his business base to the Cayman Islands. Cayman was once again highlighted in December when I had the pleasure again to attend the Joint Ministerial Council meeting in London, and while there had an opportunity to meet with and speak to a gathering of friends of Cayman and those who would find it good business to invest in our country. I traveled to London again in March to give the keynote address at the Caribbean Council's annual reception in the House of Lords at the request of the Right Honourable Lord Folkes of Comnock, the President of the Caribbean Council. This will give us yet another opportunity, this time among UK members of Parliament, members of the House of Lords and business leaders to expound on the many opportunities that exist for investment in the Cayman Islands. We continue to be invited to tout Cayman because the global players not only realize that we can compete, but they see that we have built a reputation as a jurisdiction of stability and integrity. We have a legislative and regulatory framework that is strong enough to withstand international scrutiny, yet flexible enough to provide the industry with the products and services it needs to attract sound business. And we have the expertise and professional personnel to provide complex business assistance. The process of keeping our legislative and regulatory framework on the cutting edge is a continuous one, and we are constantly updating the suite of legislation to provide further opportunities to enhance our competitive position. We have revamped the exempted limited partnerships law, the contracts rights of third parties law, the mutual funds law, and are discussing amendments to the trust law and companies law with industry, and finalizing the drafting of legislation to permit the formation of a brand new vehicle, the exempted limited liability company. We continue to remain engaged with our industry partners and key stakeholders through our collaboration with, for example, Cayman Finance as a key industry representative body. In fact, the Minister of Financial Services and his team recently returned from a very successful trip to New York, the first stop on the Minister's program for the year, in which they teamed up with Cayman Finance to deliver an industry presentation and conduct multiple meetings with industry partners. There are some very new initiatives underway in the context of this collaboration, which will see new legislation and incentives targeting growth in a number of areas, including insurance and reinsurance, and renewed marketing efforts and resources to support and grow the industry. I quote the chairman of the Institute for Global Economic Growth and Cato Institute Senior Fellow, Richard Rand, from a 12th January 2015 article in the Washington Times, in which he said, Cayman now has almost total tax transparency with the United Kingdom, the European Union, and the United States as a result of tax information exchange agreements. Yet its financial sector continues to grow. More company licenses, more of the world's hedge funds, with total assets of almost $2 trillion, and more insurance companies. This growth is not driven by tax evasion, but mainly by regulatory and civil court efficiency and integrity. To most of you in this room, I suppose I could be accused of preaching to the choir, but I think I have satisfactorily answered the question on our ability to compete. As to the state of the nation, it is getting better and better all the time, but not without hard work, dedication, and a determined strategy that combines sound management of public sector resources, facilitation of private sector growth, development of key infrastructure projects, and continued investment in our people. This is a time for Caymanian visionaries. When we think we've reached a superlative, Cayman must recalibrate and reach higher, not just as a leading offshore financial center, but the most competitive jurisdiction in this hemisphere. Not only one of the top Caribbean islands for affluent travelers, but the most sought-after warm-weather destination on the globe. Not just a great place to live, but home to the most desirable quality of life in the Caribbean. This is a time for Caymanian visionaries, and many of you are in this room today, our business leaders, our statesmen, our hospitality connoisseurs, our creative class, and our entrepreneurs. So, back to the theme. From where I see it, the question is not whether we can compete. The question is, can they compete with us? Thank you.